of every newspaper. It's out of control. The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob. He ought to invite us in, say, please make Chicago safe. We're going to lose a great city if we don't do it quickly.
All right, it's Thanksgiving season in the United States, a holiday that usually blends tradition, ceremony, and a bit of lighthearted humor. Each year, the president carries out the long-standing custom of pardoning a turkey, an event meant to be symbolic and uncomplicated. Welcome back to Iraq. This particular year, however, the ceremony took a turn that has generated a lot of discussion, not because of the tradition itself, but because of the remarks made during it. What follows is a detailed, neutral comparison between how the event was presented by major news outlets and what was actually said at the podium. The televised coverage of the moment, especially from large networks, focused primarily on the surface-level aspects of the event. Reports highlighted the pardoning of the two birds, the formal declaration, and the usual light humor presidents tend to include during the ceremony. Coverage described the turkeys' names, their preparation for the event, and the general festive environment. This portrayal emphasized the ceremonial and cultural significance without spending much time on specific unscripted remarks that occurred. However, when watching the full speech, there were segments that many observers found notable due to their sharp tone. At one point, the president commented on issues related to city governance and public safety, referencing Chicago specifically. The comments involved criticism of local officials and remarks on crime statistics, some of which were disputed afterward by fact-checkers and local reports. These lines were not included in several mainstream televised summaries of the event, leading some viewers to question the contrast between the coverage and the full sequence of events. Another moment involved a reference to international incarceration policies, specifically mentioning El Salvador. The president made a comparison between local crime responses and that country's approach to criminal detention. Some of the comments framed the facilities there as highly efficient while linking them to discussions about public safety within U.S. cities. These remarks stood out largely because they were delivered during a ceremony traditionally confined to light humor. In addition, there were comments regarding a governor, including references that touched on physical appearance and disagreements over policy implementation. The president stated that he had intended to make a joke written by speechwriters, but then mentioned that he preferred not to focus on personal characteristics, even though the remarks themselves circled around the topic. These portions were noticeably sharper than what audiences generally expect from the turkey pardon event, which is usually designed to avoid political or personal criticism. A separate section of the speech addressed crime in various cities, such as Washington, D.C., Memphis, and Chicago. Statements were made about safety improvements and decreases in crime rates, some of which were later evaluated by local agencies and found to differ from available data. There was also mention of an incident involving a woman who had been harmed, with a reference to a past arrest record of suspect. These additions gave the ceremony a more serious tone than usual, blending policy criticism with concerns about public safety. At one point, the president also referred to a previous year's turkey pardon and discussed the use of an auto pen by the prior administration. The remarks included rhetorical questions and references to procedural details of the earlier pardon. While humorous in intention, the section introduced political comparisons into a moment normally framed as nonpartisan. The ceremony also included a brief mention of Hunter Biden's name, echoing past political discourse. It was delivered as part of a larger improvised aside. Again, this type of commentary was unusual for this specific event, which historically avoids inserting political matters to maintain a lighter tone for families and children. When viewed in its full, uninterrupted form, the speech moved between humor, domestic policy criticism, international comparisons, and commentary on past political events. Some viewers felt that the major networks underreported these segments, focusing instead on the ceremonial summary, while others argued that televised summaries often condense events for time and therefore leave out many specifics. The contrast generated discussion about media framing, editing choices, and what networks consider essential when covering events of symbolic importance. For many people, the turkey pardon is simply a brief cultural moment that marks the start of the holiday period. It is traditionally considered a light event with minimal political relevance. When the tone shifts into areas of policy disagreement or personal remarks, it can stand out sharply, especially when other institutions choose not to highlight those moments. The core issue debated afterward was not only the content of the remarks, but the difference between the full recording and the summaries presented by some outlets. Observers on all sides discussed whether the presentation should maintain tradition or reflect the full, unedited reality of the remarks delivered. This situation raised broader questions about how public ceremonies, even symbolic ones, evolved depending on the administration and the environment of national politics. Some argued that modern coverage, whether condensed or selective, contributes to public misunderstanding of tone and context. Others argued that deviations from tradition naturally call for closer examination. Regardless of perspective, the event became an example of how even a routine ceremonial moment can generate significant attention when unscripted language changes its character. The Thanksgiving turkey pardon is unlikely to lose its place as a cultural tradition. However, this year's version highlighted how public expectations and political communication often intersect in unpredictable ways. Whether the focus remains on the birds, the humor, or the broader commentary depends largely on how the event is recounted afterward. As a result, discussions about neutrality, completeness of news coverage, and the nature of presidential ceremonies continue to shape how these moments are understood by viewers across different platforms.